We're getting live. What is up, everybody? It is Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Also know I'm a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching Communications, and know that this is the home of epic conversations, and the Dr. Vibe show is a place for epic conversations. And we have one of our favorites back on the block. We were talking about Quincy Jones off air. That's why I used the back on the block. And
good reference.
As I say to many people online and offline, when I know I need to get the real deal about media, this is the person, this is the lady I go to. I'm not even going to read her bio because she's been on the Dr. Vibe show enough. So you can go and watch previous conversations that we have. But what I will say, and every time she's either on my show live or checking in, she's a host of one of the best live stream programs out there called Mediascope. It's on most Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time via Instagram, Facebook Live, and Periscope. It is the definitive online show, in my opinion, when it comes to media, tech, and pop culture. We have Chetachi back in the house, and we're going to talk about a certain movie that she's gone to see already twice in less than a week and going back maybe for a third time tomorrow, Black Panther, but from a media standpoint. But let's welcome back the wonderful, blessed, and highly favored Dr. Chetachi. How are you?
Oh, gosh, I'm fantastic. First of all, thank you for that fantastic introduction. I'm wonderful, sir. How are you?
I am blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. It has been too long since you've been on, but you got your own show. You travel to these conferences, so I'm just happy to get you to stay still for like a few minutes.
Yeah, no, sometimes it's good to be still.
Yes, it's part of the process.
Amen.
Absolutely. Well, Black Panther, from a media standpoint. Now, before we went live, you told me you bought your ticket to see Black Panther when?
January.
Lord of mercy.
January 15th, I believe.
Oh, wow. So
yeah,
I want to have this conversation, and people certainly ask any questions or conversation points that you want to bring up during our chat here. But before... I want to go back because in my mind this afternoon, what are we going to chat about with Dr. Chetachi tonight in regards to Black Panther? So I want to go back to when you first heard that this movie was being made. What was your initial reaction?
I was excited. Well, let me tell you how I heard. This was actually 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. That I knew about this because I actually happened to interview the costume designer for Black Panther, Ruth Carter. Yeah, I did an interview with her at the American Black Film Festival. So not only did she do Black Panther, but she also did Marshall, the one about Thurgood Marshall.
Sure.
She did way back in the day Malcolm X. So wow. She is a maverick, and she is a legend in terms of costume design in Hollywood. Yes. So this is when I was doing research for, getting ready to interview her. I said, oh, she's doing the costumes for Black Panther. And we talked about the whole process of going from something like Marshall and even, something like a Malcolm X to this, which is so very different. So it was 2 years ago that I first heard that actually a little over 2 years ago, I heard the musings of this happening, right. And I was really excited because I love the Marvel Universe.
Did you have any concerns along the way about the final product? Or as you were hearing the different people that were being involved, you said, this is going to be a good thing?
Yes. Of course, I was hearing the people being that were going to be involved, and I knew it was going to be a good thing. But initially, there's always that little, are they going to mess this up? Because my whole thing with, and this is not necessarily a remake, but it is a reimagining and a reboot of the comic. Whenever they do things like that, sometimes it doesn't end up so nice. Marvel has had good luck with this, but I was very concerned because of the type of character. You know, it's Black Panther. You're talking about the continent of Africa, a fictional country, Wakanda. I have this thing, especially since a lot of my research also deals with African images on film and Black images on film. I had this concern about how they were going to portray the Africans in this Wakanda. We already know the backstory from the comic book, but of course it's a little bit different. There have been some other liberties taken from the time that the comic book was created in 1966. So I was a little concerned about what the images were going to be when I first heard it. But then I found out Ryan Coogler was directing. Then I found out it was going to be in it, and I said, you know what, they're in good hands.
Excellent. So before we really get talking about the actual movie and the media impact, traditionally, up until this movie, on a scale of 0 to 10, how do you feel the comic universe has treated Black imagery?
Almost non-existent.
Wow. Wow.
That is not a word, but there's absence. So not that there is not, and this is the conversation you hear. I've been following social media very closely when it comes to Black Panther, and then of course this leads to Black images in general in comic books. Now there have always been Black nerds. There have always been Black superhero characters, but when we talk about we hear the conversation about, oh, well, what about Storm? Okay, yes, Storm was there. In fact, Storm in the comic book, Storm and Black Panther were married briefly. Okay, so there's a relationship there. Storm is from Kenya, but we've seen this Americanized version of what Storm is supposed to be. Halle Berry clearly is not from Kenya, and that's okay. But we see a romanticized version of what they thought Storm was safe to be. And to be honest, at the time that came out, it may not have been somebody like a Lupita Nyong'o may not have flown as a Storm. We've kind of evolved a little bit since then. But if we're looking at kind of the comic book world, we know that Black superhero characters have existed. But in terms of the mainstreams like DC Comics, like Marvel, not so much. It has not been the main. Let's just say in the mainstream, Black comic book characters have not been pushed to the forefront in a large way before now. I don't want to hear about Blade. We know Blade. I don't want to hear about some of the other things. The difference with Black Panther from a story standpoint is that these are not people that are, quote, magical Negroes, meaning they don't have superpowers per se. It is because of this substance called vibranium that they're able to build technology to help assist them with what they're doing. So it's not like they're performing magic, if that makes sense. So that's the difference. Whereas with something like Blade, who is a vampire, that's a quote unquote superpower. Okay, that is something that is inside of him, as opposed to something that a person created to enable them to do amazing things, if that makes sense.
Sure. We're not in the minds of Disney, but why do you think Disney decided to go at this project now? Do you have any thoughts on why they decided to release it now? Because maybe it's a very interesting move with the social political climate in America right now. Do you think that may have something to do with it?
I think there are all sorts of reasons that this was great timing, besides it being Black History Month, besides the socio-political climate, besides the fact that comic books and nerd culture, quote unquote, is hot now. They see green. Let's look at this. The bottom line look, movies are a business. They're not doing it to be nice. So they're doing it so they're going to make money back. They're not trying to give back to the Black History movement. That is not their cause. So if we're thinking anything other than that, okay. And, maybe as a director, Ryan Coogler may have had in mind, okay, this is good, this is what, but okay, Marvel is a business. And I have an interesting point about Marvel I'll bring up later.
Okay.
And so Marvel is a business, and they have to. That's the thing. It worked well on all fronts for them. And so this was the perfect time for them to come out. It seems that it just everything lined up and they were going to do it, and it makes money. Let's look at the audiences. You're going to have people who are really into comic book culture, who are self-professed nerds, etc., that love superheroes, that were going to go see this movie anyway. Black people were going to go see this because it's a majority black cast movie, and you have not seen something like this in this strain in a very long time. All the movies that they're like, what about this? What about that? Can you really compare them to a Black Panther? I don't think you can. And then, they didn't have across the board the level, and it's not just the cast, it's also the writer, it's also the director. Okay, so you're looking at it. This is something completely different. This is a different animal altogether than past movies. So this is far from a cabin in the sky.
So how do you feel the media response has been to this movie? And I want to break it down comparing the black media response to the non-black media response to this movie.
This is very interesting. When you see, for example, articles in The Root, articles in the Griot, articles, and for those who don't know, The Root and the Griot are online publications that typically deal with the Black experience and Black issues, and current issues as they relate to the Black community. So also, my favorite one, I can't even remember right now, Blavity. Okay, so Blavity as well. You're seeing it from the standpoint of writers and people who understand the critical nature of having representation on screen, of having Black representation on screen, and what that means. So you even see differences in the way that things are covered. Not just the fact that people came in cosplay from Coming to America, from Lion King, from the movie itself, and wearing African gear or African attire, but also what that means, the deeper meanings underneath that, the different types of things, interviewing people about what they were wearing and why they were wearing it. So looking at the hashtag Wakanda Forever, it was, and looking at it as a movement, as opposed to a movie that everybody is all hype about. Whereas when you look at quote unquote mainstream media, and I don't like to necessarily say white media, mainstream media, which kind of does equal that. You're right, Dr. Hyde. When you look at mainstream media, they're looking at numbers. Of course, we're looking at numbers too, but numbers are not the operative thing, because we already knew that we could sell out theaters. We already knew that people would be receptive to seeing this type of story, and it doesn't matter that the cast is, but we know this. It's Hollywood that is needing to learn this now. So we know this. So you see differences, and I don't necessarily see any surprise, because there was, twitterings of this for years, that this was happening, that this was going to come, and it was going to be a really big thing. And here's the thing. Speaking of media and the way that things are covered, when you look at, for like Captain America Civil War, for the Avengers, you saw huge ad campaigns on television. I barely saw, in fact, I only started seeing Black Panther trailers on television once the movie came out. Now, you could just say, were you not paying attention? That could very well be. But the point is, even if I didn't want to see for Captain America Civil War and the Avengers, I ended up seeing it anyway, simply because. But there was a lot, most of the advertisement for this was done online. There was a lot of social media, huge social media campaign, which is a stark difference to some of the other Marvel films. So in terms of the way it's been covered, and we've done a lot of word of mouth and social media passing on. If you look at people's social media account, there was one that I looked at, and it was a count every few so often in her Instagram. She would have a countdown, and it would be a picture from the film, and then over it would be 10. And she counted all the way down to 1, meaning one day before the movie. So that was our way of spreading what was going on. We were being griots in that case.
How savvy of a move was it for Disney to do the majority of their marketing via social media?
Very savvy. It proves that you don't have to stick with the model of old advertising. When we look at advertising, and it still really harkens back to the days of the 1800s and newspapers and yellow journalism, and not much has changed since those days. Maybe delivery method, but not much in terms of that. So the fact that they actually took to social and did a lot of this on social is brilliant, because you're trying to reach the audiences who are interested in this. So of course you've got a lot of Gen X that are interested in the Marvel universe, but you've also got a lot of millennials. What do millennials use? Social media. So they went where their audience was, and that's what advertisers have to start to do. And this is a whole other conversation, but advertisers are usually very leery of doing things like putting a lot of money into social media campaigns, because they don't know that they're going to get the eyes. That's why they do things like, oh, well, we only want influencers that have XY amount of followers and get this amount of views, because they're still thinking with an old model of advertising. So on Marvel's end, this was brilliant, and it proves that social media can work as an advertising tool.
What different areas in media is Black Panther?
I can't hear you, Dr.
Sorry. What are some of the different areas in media, in your opinion, has this movie been a game changer and maybe been a catalyst for years to come?
So let me tell you the story that I was going to tell you. Okay. Years ago, Marvel actually wanted to unload all the rights to their Marvel films to Sony.
Yes, I remember that. Yes, I do remember that. Yes.
And Sony was like, no. So this kind of forced Marvel to produce all this universe themselves. And it has been to grand affair, basically, the fact that they did it. So it ended up working out for them. But this goes to show you that obviously Marvel was not necessarily into the whole production thing huge the way Sony was, but it shows you that you don't have to be one of the majors initially in order to get these things done. So I think it's a huge paradigm, because it's the same thing like Netflix, what Netflix has been able to do, what Amazon and Hulu have been able to do. They're winning award after award for things like Hulu and The Handmaid's Tale, etc. You can like run off what Netflix is getting critical acclaim for. So, it goes to show you that the old style of big media, quote unquote, is not what's working now. It doesn't mean it won't ever come back, but it's not what's working now. You've got these smaller companies that are, I don't think we could call Netflix small anymore.
No.
When you woo Shonda Rhimes for $100 million, and then Ryan, what's his name, for $300 million.
And just let me interrupt. Did they not, I guess it was Amazon, take someone from NBC? There's some major producer in the last week.
Yeah, no, it was Ryan. It was Fox. They took Ryan. Why can't I remember his last name now?
No,
but they took him from Fox.
Yeah, but there's another lady, and I saw it in your Twitter feed, and I read it. There's a lady is either NBC or one of the traditionals that
They took from NBC to I can't remember her name, from NBC to Amazon Studios.
Yes. Big steal.
Yeah, so
huge.
This is happening. This is a paradigm shift. And no longer, this also shows a paradigm shift in the individual, because whereas before you would have been like, I'm just going to stay put. I don't know anything about that. All of this harkens back to the .com days. Remember, where everybody was going into the computer, the .com, and then the .com industry burst and everybody's like, what the hell happened? Right. So I think some people were still thinking about back then, but now you've got that legacy starting to wear off, and people are comfortable switching from something quote unquote tried and true like an NBC and hopping over to Amazon Studios. Or even if you look at, I can't remember what her title is, but Campbell Brown, who was a journalist for many years with NBC. Yeah. I think she was also a producer with NBC. Yeah. She's now the head. I think she's head of content for Facebook. She's with Facebook, but that's a leap. That's a huge leap to go with somebody tried and true to these new media companies. So that's a lot of what we're seeing. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. We'll get into it more. What impact does Black Panther, in your opinion, have with the relationship between media and blacks?
That's a really good question. I think that you mean the relationship between media and black people in terms of
coverage and view them, because my concern here is this a blip?
That's a good question. It doesn't have to be a blip if we don't allow it to be a blip. Now, if you remember, when you're seeing all of these, there's a lot of think pieces and things, right? And more are coming. Believe me, black academics are about to be all over this. There are a lot of think pieces looking at this as, okay, what now? And that's really my question. Wakanda, what now? So this does not have to be an anomaly. This does not have to be a one-off. If we really take the momentum from the power of having a movie do well, and not just well, blowing everything out of the water with almost an all-black cast. What does this mean for future production? And not just future production in the mainstream. What does this mean for independent? Because Ryan Coogler came out of the American Black Film Festival. I believe it was, I don't remember if it was a short or a feature, but one year he entered it and won. And he used that money to do Fruitvale Station, yes, which also starred Michael B. Jordan.
Yes.
From there, he then did Creed, one in the series, the Rocky series, right? Yep. From there, this is the next huge, he's done other things, of course, but this is the next big thing. So, the fact that he started on the independent scene is something very important. I'm interested to see what effect this is going to have in terms of the momentum of just production in general, black production in general. So it's not always about, now because we have an all-black film, we can all get jobs at Marvel. What? No, that's not what the point is, and that's not what it's about. That shows you the possibilities of what can be. I need you to go and do it. And so it's going to be interesting to see where we pull together in terms of media to produce ourselves, yes, rather than just allowing or waiting for mainstream media outlets to give us the okay to do it or bring us aboard to do it.
It's a good point, because if this movie is a game changer, we would wish that there'll be movies like this produced by people of color. Like, yes, or directed by, that's what I'm hoping to see, that impact, instead of consumers or producers. And I really want, and I think it's great you also mentioned about what is this going to do to the whole area of independent filmmaking? Is it going to open up that window?
Yeah, I think it will, because this is, think about it. I shouldn't say most, but many people don't necessarily go to an independent theater or a film festival. The ones that you see that do this is a special niche of people that are film aficionados anyway. So you're not going to get the average mainstream person that is going to do this. Something like this, where people know Ryan Coogler came out of the independent circuit. A lot of people came out of the independent circuit initially, and then they were able to do this. That knowledge alone, I think, will let people know, well, that's where they started. This is where I can start. For those who are wanting to get into it. And for those who are already producing independently, which a lot of us are, I think it's just a bigger push to do things, because guess what? Because Black Panther sold so well, it's more that you're going to be more likely probably to get a second look at sponsorship, to get somebody wanting to invest in things because they know black sells, they know good scripts sell. So if you're able to do those types of things and produce something good, the hesitation will probably be gone. Whereas there was more hesitation before. This I think has opened up the game for both mainstream and independent television and film.
I'm just praying that this happens, because something tells me in the back of my head the old guard is only gonna let a little bit of the top. Like, they've opened up the top for Black Panther. Well, that's Black Panther. That's something special. It's a comic book series. I don't know if they'll open up the top or their thought process to take chances on wider opportunities, because I can hear them saying, well, Black Panther's been around, it's been a comic book series, etc. Why should I take a risk on you, because there's no traction in the past, if you understand where I'm coming from?
Oh, absolutely. And let's be clear. Hollywood likes to work with who they know, because Hollywood is very adverse to risk, and media in general is very adverse to risk, and they want to make money. And so if you're an unknown who has never done anything before, doesn't have any relationships with any of these studios or producers or production companies, I understand they're risk adverse, they may not. But my question to everyone is, then are we going to wait for them to say, to give us the opportunity to do it? No, this shows you what we can do and what we're capable of doing. So now let's do it ourselves. There's no reason, and that's not saying that you cannot also participate in mainstream things, but for every Black Panther, let's just say that entire cast of Black Panther, let's say that there were, just the cast alone, let's say that there were a good 300 people involved, okay, between all the extras and everything. Let's just say that there were a good 300 people. For every 300 people, which means a full cast of Black Panther, there are thousands of other people who are not going to get that opportunity. So are we going to wait until it's their turn? No. I think there's room now. We just have to produce it. And it comes with using platforms like what you're doing, Dr. Vibe, and not just saying, oh, television and big screen are the only ways to get your content across. There are people that are already doing things, creating amazing web series that are raising money through Kickstarter and doing it. Now, again, people have to understand, it's not getting your work out there and having it seen is not initially going to sit you on easy street money-wise. And for some people, it may never. You really have to do this because you desire to see Black images on screen, and you love this field and you love doing it. That doesn't mean you can't get paid. You absolutely can. You absolutely can monetize. But if monetization is your only goal, you are going to end up with churning out rubbish just because. So it's doable, Dr. Vibe. And I feel your whatever, but it's doable. But we can't wait for mainstream to be our only outlet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to get your feelings watching them. Like, we found out what you felt like before the movie. What did you feel like during the movie, and what are you feeling now after 2 viewings after the movie?
I feel absolutely great. So before the movie, I was excited. I was already picking out what I was going to wear. I was getting things together. And, the hype had been building, not just amongst social media, but on social media by different organizations. I told you it was my sorority who actually did a screening. And so amongst all of us, this momentum is starting to build, and you're starting to feel, well, this is more than just a movie. This is a movement. And there are a few different reasons as to why now why it feels like this now, again, socio-political, etc. So I felt really good initially about this. During the movie, I love the Marvel Universe. I'm a nerd. I love comic books. So I was excited just in general. And the fact that it was Black Panther made it even better. And the first time I saw it, it was at the IMAX theater. So I am at the IMAX theater, huge screen, magnificent sound. There is a Black Panther cosplay person outside, so I'm like, oh, I can't wait to take a picture with them. And there was a comic book legend, I can't remember his name, but he came to the screening because he actually used to work for Marvel. Everybody retires down here. So he actually used to work for Marvel and draw and write for Marvel. And so the point is that it was an experience. They made it an entire experience across the board. And then, of course, when I saw it for the second time at the private screening, everybody was dressed up. It gives you this sense of pride to the point where, you know, people like to have their, you know, honk their horns at you, think that you cut you off, have their right of way. And this has been my saying for the past several days. We have Wakanda, a warrior, a women warriors that are in charge of Wakanda, and Atlanta has a mayor named Keisha. Leave me alone. that has been my thing. So anything anybody does, you're not going to steal my joy. You're so minuscule in my world right now. So that's the feeling that people have come away from the film with. I've talked to so many people, and there is this empowerment that has come out of this, and we needed it. The interesting thing, not to get political, is that the very idiot who's in charge of this country right now happens to inhabit 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, who called countries that come from this continent, though Wakanda is fictional, he called them out of their name, and then look what happens. Bam, it debuts. Bam, it's about Africa. Bam, there are Africans in it. Bam, it's the top movie in the country, and there's nothing you can do about it. That is the sweetest revenge of all. Chickens coming home to roost over and over again. So there's that whole feeling of euphoria that comes with seeing yourself on screen. And even though the mainstream doesn't get it because they always see themselves on screen, if you do not see yourself reflected in media, you don't believe in a positive light. You don't believe that that's something you can do.
And it's interesting, and I don't watch a lot of TV, but on, I guess, quote, the traditional media platforms, I didn't hear it being talked about a lot, like to the point, like I thought, you know, if you're a traditional media, you're seeing a number of blacks making this big onrush to cinemas, dressed in African garb. I didn't see a lot of coverage of that on mainstream media. I'm going, isn't that newsworthy?
It absolutely is newsworthy, but what mainstream media deems newsworthy is different from what we deem newsworthy. So if you look at many, again, social media, if you look at publications like The Root and The Griot and Blavity, if you look at local newspapers, local black newspapers around the U.S., and you know what? Don't you all in Canada also have local black newspapers?
Yep.
So if you look at those newspapers, you're going to be seeing these stories. So the eye with which a journalist writing for one of those publications uses versus a journalist writing for a mainstream publication is going to be very different. Again, they're going to be heavily focused on the numbers. They're going to be heavily focused on the records because remember, it is the biggest, the baddest, the best of when it comes to what is newsworthy. Whereas for us, it's representation and all the little small interesting stories in that representation.
It's a very good point. Representation versus money. But wasn't there enough coverage ahead of time saying how much money this movie would make in its first weekend? And as I said, like black media were all over it. Other media, if they covered it at all, was very little.
Well, absolutely. And here's the thing. I think there were a couple of things that happened, though this is not an excuse. There was also a shooting,
yes,
a mass shooting a few days before that.
Yes.
And so
good point.
There was a different feeling. Who's to say if that event had not happened, what the coverage would have been like from the mainstream media? Because now you're talking about two competing things. I'm not giving them a pass, but just postulating that could be part of the issue.
Understood, because and many news media rooms are limited with resources, and they're actually dwindling by the moment. But still, hardly anything.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, even down to the commercials, and we're not seeing the ads and the trailers for it. You're absolutely right. Again, I would like to see or like to think that had this event not happened, that there would have been more coverage, but I really don't know that that would be the case. And guess what? We proved that we don't need your raggedy coverage because we were able to excel without it. And this is what we've always done. Our organizations are nowhere near covered to the same extent or as much or in the same way that mainstream, quote, organizations are. So it's really an anomaly when you, I mean, there are a lot of reasons for that as well, but it's really an anomaly when you do see that kind of coverage. So we've always dealt with this. This is not the first time that there's been a lack. There's always a lack of coverage when it comes to our organizations or our things or our movies. Like, okay, why do you think there was a show that was just on, it got canceled. It was called White People Famous or White Folks Famous, something to that. It was on Showtime. Okay. And it starred an SNL alum.
Right.
And so that's that concept that if whites know who you are, then you're famous, right? But there are a whole lot, think about within the Black community, the celebrities we had that were like, oh my gosh, it's such and such that other people would never know.
So I'm thinking about this here. Now, you're still doing your teaching of students, correct?
Of course, of course.
So did you have any pre-Black Panther conversations at all with them?
Not so much. Remember that most of my teaching now is online. And even though I do have these conversations with them, and I did post, with one or two, I put up the, what do you think about Black Panther? That type of thing. And they were happy that it was coming out, but I haven't had anything too deep with students. Deeper conversations have been online and in forums like this.
So the conversations that you're having, what are some of the common themes, whether media or non-media themes coming out of those conversations in regards to Black Panther?
Oh, definitely this sense of home. That I don't want to spoil it for you or any of the other viewers.
All right. No, I'm fine.
But there is this, and you talked about this last night on the conversation that you had about Black Panther. You asked about relations between Africans and African Americans.
Yes, and I'm glad you were hearing some of that, and I know you put in some of your commentary, but if you want to expand on it after watching the movie, I'd really appreciate your thoughts on that.
So there's so much symbolism in this movie that there's no way that you can let it go. So I expect to see more think pieces, etc., more panel discussions at conferences on Black Panther, these types of movies in general. I know it's coming. So when you look at, there are two particular characters that symbolize this. You've got Ryan Coogler's character, and why am I forgetting his name? It will come back to me. So Ryan Coogler's character, and he plays, hold on a minute, let me go, because I want to, Killmonger, Eric Killmonger, but really Njadaka, okay?
Yep.
So he plays Eric Killmonger, and who is half Wakandan. And there's a whole series of events as to how that happens. And then you have Chadwick Boseman, who plays T'Challa, who is Wakandan, who is Black Panther. And you see this juxtaposition of T'Challa, who represents Wakanda and Africa and Africanism and having a culture, versus Killmonger, Eric Killmonger, who is half Wakandan, but is left to grow up in the U.S., left to grow up in Oakland, in that area where he is, amongst, the drugs and the crime and et cetera. So he really represents the, quote, African American end of it, as opposed to King T'Challa. So there is, in the movie, you see it comes to a head, and there's this resentment that you can really feel by Michael B. Jordan's character towards Wakanda and Wakandans because of that. So it harkens back kind of to the days of this resentment sometimes that African Americans may carry because of slavery, obviously, because of having culture stripped from them and not knowing. And there's a lot of misconceptions on both sides. And this is what these two characters put in. I don't want to put too much out there because I don't want to spoil it. But you'll see that when you do see the movie, you'll see the juxtaposition of African American issues versus African issues.
Interesting. I'll definitely be looking to take give some critical mass and thought in that and come back to you in regards to that. What 10 years down the road, what do you think and what do you hope will be said about Black Panther's media standpoint?
I'm hoping that this is a good question. I'm hoping that, first of all, that this momentum just does not die with Black Panther. And so that it's not just this was a media event, that this is just, I'm hoping that people will say this was the start of the new era in Black film and television. That's what I'm hoping, that it is a springboard and not just tomorrow everybody puts away their African clothes until next Black History Month.
So do you feel we have not 100%, but do we have the processes and the infrastructure to start moving closer to that goal that you would like to see?
Good question. Individually, we do not, but I think as a collective, we do. Though there seem to be issues, obviously, in terms of economics, etc., with Black community, we proved this weekend that we have economic power. I'm tired of hearing we don't have the resources because we keep doing this. We'll go to a movie and sell it out. It'll be #1. That's our money. Regardless of where you got it from, it's our money, okay? So we do have the resources. It's about pooling them together to get something happening and to make something so it's doable. We need to stop with the excuses, for real.
Understood. So I have already heard that they've already planned to do a second movie already. So I've heard. You probably know more than me. It's already a done deal that we're going to get a second Black Panther?
This is, you know what? I don't know for 100% sure. They never say until everything is squared away. But just like with Wonder Woman, the records it broke, and very soon after it was already greenlit for a sequel. This is going to have a sequel. And here's the thing. If you watch this is why I always tell people, if you go to a Marvel film, don't get up when the credits roll. Stay through the credits because there's always an Easter egg planted in terms of what's going to happen next. Something is always going to happen next. And so there were Easter eggs planted about the possible next Marvel, the direction they're going to go in next. I know what I would like to see.
Okay. We'll keep that quiet.
Okay. Yes.
Now, I'm going to throw something or put something in your lap and see how you respond to it. There were some people who were saying that Marvel should donate some of their money made from this to the Black community. Thoughts?
Who in the Black community? Give it to Black people. I mean, we need to be specific. This is another thing. When you ask for something, you have to be intentional or you're going to get what you didn't intend. So when we say these types of things, I don't disagree with the fact that they're making a huge killing off of Black people for this. And there are people in need. I don't disagree with the fact that there should be something given. And that doesn't necessarily mean there should have been. What ended up happening is there were some people, I know some of the stars of the film and some other people actually spent their own money to bring children from inner city neighborhoods to the theater. That should have been Marvel doing that. They should have had they should have had free screenings and should have free screenings so that teachers, etc., can take school children to see this film. That's what should happen. So it doesn't necessarily have to. And then definitely, okay, Marvel, if you're thinking, you're trying to cultivate the next generation of comic book heroes, of people that are interested in producing these types of things. Why not an apprenticeship program? Why not a comic apprenticeship program? So it doesn't have to be a monetary gift to the Black community. It should be in all these other ways where they're going to be, I give you money one time, okay, it can be seed stuff, but I plant knowledge in your head, you're going to be able to do these things forever and carry it on.
Dr. Tachi, that's a very good suggestion. That's a missed opportunity. That's a huge...
I'm not expecting them to think like a philanthropist. I expect very little from people these days, for real. So,
no, that's a huge missed opportunity, because if they did that, oh, look who is here. Your dear friend, Dr. Cami, is in the house.
Hey, Cami, how are you?
Dr. Cami's in the house. That would be... Hey. Could you imagine if they did some sort of program, Marvel? How much goodwill and credibility they get out of that?
Absolutely, absolutely. There is a whole contingency of, in fact, one of my very best friends, her son is in college right now, in his final year of college, and he's studying English, not because he just wants to be a writer. He wants to write for comic books, movies, or video games. So he's into this whole Afrofuturism thing, and he loves it. And so those are the type of kids that you want to draw to your programs. I don't understand, but you know what? Usually what happens is it takes somebody, it always takes us, the diversity officers of the world, to say, hey, why don't you? Because they will never do it on their own. Because not that they're not necessarily smart enough to devise that, but they don't have to. And so they don't think about those things. It's always left to us to bring up the fact of, hey, you know, maybe you want to have some women, or maybe you want to have some people of color here.
And actually, you bring up another good point here. And I was in another conversation last week with a lady named Aisha Staggers. And one of the things that she brought up, and she's on the Dr. I show every week now. She's fantastic. But she was talking about the whole area of Justin Timberlake and the Super Bowl performance, and she felt that he hasn't really that Janet Jackson hasn't really been given a pass since that incident, though Justin Timberlake seems to be given a pass. And she was talking about the whole portrayal of Black women in media, and it's interesting to see in this movie how much a high platform Black women are given, and hopefully that will shift the paradigm a little bit of Black women's portrayal in media.
Oh my goodness. Not just, I 100% agree. Not just in terms of what they're able to do, not just in terms of their strength, not just in terms of the fact that you have a strong Black woman head of basically fighting forces, protecting the kingdom. That's huge. That you have the top scientist in the country is the sister of the king, and she's like a teenager, basically. That's huge for representation in math and science. That's huge for representation in terms of military and armed forces, that type of thing. And then let's be clear and let's be real. Hollywood has not had a good track record, you know, until recently. You're starting to see this, but originally, if you were darker than a certain skin tone, you are not going to be picked to be lead anything in Hollywood. And then especially representations of one interesting thing about this, because you know I'm Nigerian, and I love the fact that there are an awful lot of Africans and descendants of Africans that are in this film, and you see all skin tones, but you see darker skinned women, which was not something that was considered beautiful before. So that is huge. So even on top of the representation of displaying strong Black women, you're showing that Black women come in hues darker than darker than caramel. And not that there's anything wrong with it, but when all of the roles go to so women that look a certain way or have a certain type of hair, it's problematic in terms of representation, because it counts out all the other little girls who don't look like this. This says something to little girls like, oh, you can. And all black little girls, not just dark-skinned ones, all black little girls. But it's good to see that representation in terms of color as well.
Well, I'm glad you shared about that because I haven't heard too much commentary on that angle from the media.
Oh, I'm going to say it.
Oh, I know you're going to. That's why I have you here, because you say a lot of things that should be said that most people aren't going to say or are afraid to say, that speak to power, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask, when you've gone to the screenings, what has the demographic of the audience been? And I know it's probably mostly black, but I want two-part question. A, okay. What percentage non-black have been in the theater? And then of the blacks that are attending, what percentage male versus female?
Good question. So it depends. So let me go with my experience. I went to an IMAX theater, and it was I think it was a half and half. And it depends on where you go to see this film, to be honest. If you are somewhere out in a suburban area, very far away, there you may not have as many black people, or you may not have as much diversity. Whereas if you're closer to an urban center, you're going to get a little bit more diversity. So for me, I live in an urban center, but the IMAX theater was, about half and half. But then what's happening is you have a lot of private screening events. So the private screening event we had, it was basically all black, right. That type of thing. So you're seeing a lot of that. You're seeing a lot of churches. You're seeing a lot of fraternities and sororities and civic groups doing outings to these things.
Yes.
So that's going to add to the blackness yes. of the theater.
Well, it's interesting because I know periodically you get out to conferences. I'd be very interested if you get the opportunity to ask non-people of color, A, if they've seen the film, and B, what they feel the impact had on them and the potential impact it would have on the social economic climate. I think it'd be a very interesting question.
I definitely want to do that, because what's happening is they are seeing it, but they're not talking about it. If you look at the conversations on social media, just based off of social media, this is a largely black conversation outside of the mainstream media. They'll go and see it, but I haven't heard pimp from anybody that is really not melanated. And it's interesting to say that. I'm like, wow, well, you've seen this movie, and you had so much to say about Captain America Civil War. You had so much to say about the Avengers, but you don't have anything to say about this. Now, I'm wondering if they don't feel it's their place to talk about it because of the phenomenon it's become, and they feel uncomfortable. That's what I would be interested to hear.
Yeah, I that's a very good point. I'm going to hold you to it, because I know that you have that investigative hat amongst the many beautiful hats that you wear, physically and I guess media-wise. I think that'd be a very interesting conversation to have with people who are not of color. If they've seen the movie, if they've seen it, why? If they haven't seen it, why? What impact did it have on them? And it's almost like, it's like chameleon going into a solid. They're just stopping. They just say, it's almost like traditional media saying that's their thing. Let them have their thing. We're not going to go there, which is, I think, wrong.
Yeah, it doesn't make any good sense. Nobody said you cannot be involved in the conversation. Nobody said that at all. And I think you should be involved in the conversation, because this is what America looks like. I mean, not Wakanda, but the fact that people go to see films. Everybody goes to see films simply because there's a film that really represents us, and where we have large representation. That's a big deal. So of course we're going to go and see it. But this is what America looks like. So you need to be part of that conversation. Say something if you have something to say. What does that mean to you? You may not be able to identify with being from Africa, but you can probably identify with having a rift within your family, having family secrets, not knowing exactly where you come from. So everything that happens in that movie, you probably can identify with, whether you're African or of African descent or not.
Well, that is a good closing conversation piece for us. I'm going to ask you one last thing in regards to Black Panther and a media standpoint. I had a conversation piece in my head and I forgot it. Okay, let me go with something else here. What is your message to people of color, media content creators that are wanting to get to the point of a Black Panther? What marching orders, what words of wisdom would you give to them based on what's happened, this event called the Black Panther?
So Black Panther is relative. Black Panther is really just a metaphor for creation, content creation by Black people. Just because it's at that level of a Black Panther does not mean every single production is going to be. So my thing is like definitely aim high. Aim for as much exposure as you can get. Aim for Black Panther status, absolutely. Because when you aim for the stars, when you fall, you have very little weight. You might fall on a star. So you may not reach that top one, but you may fall and be somewhere near it. So even if you don't get to that level, in your own world, be your own Black Panther, if that makes any sense.
Wow,
you need to be the best of where you are.
Right.
And that does not necessarily mean Marvel Comics 300, because at this point worldwide, it's about 365 million in sales worldwide, and receipts have not come out for today yet. So we don't know that it's not bigger, close to 400 million. So you don't need to think 400 million. You need to think where I am now with my independent film self and the equipment I have. How can I be Wakanda? How can I Wakandaize what I'm doing?
Like it. I would just add on that, Ryan Coogler started somewhere. And
yes.
And the environment that he started in wasn't as advanced as the environment we're in right now. He has paved the path. He did his Fruitville Station. He did his Creed. He's done his Black Panther, but it was a progression, seemed like an Ava DuVernay. They had to start from somewhere. And they had to build, they had to build, they had to build. And I'm sure they don't forget where they came from, and they still have struggles. I'm sure they still have challenges. So I think that for people who are wanting to get that media content out there, I say be persistent and consistent. And if one door shuts down, there's another door you can knock on. As I always say, the more no's you get, the closer you get to your yes. And I'm sure if we had Ryan on here now, I'm sure people said no to him a number of times, but it got closer to his yes. It got closer to his Black Panther.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Dr. Tachi, you did it again. You hit it out of the park, as always, with your partner in crime, Dr. Cami, watching your back online. Jeez.
I was trying to pull it up, and I couldn't find her. So
no problem. Well, as always, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule. If people want to find out more about you, what do they need to do?
Oh, just go to @Tachiada, TACHIADA on Twitter, and you can get at me that way. I'm also @Tachiada on Periscope, and Instagram. And so you're going to get on me for not saying my show, right?
Yes, I'm going to. So you know I'm going to do that. So it's you need to do that.
So I'm the host of a show called Mediascope, which is all things media, tech, and pop culture. We do it every Wednesday at 6 p.m. on Periscope and Facebook Live. And actually 5 p.m. we do a pre-show on Instagram Live. So we run down the week in media, tech, and pop culture, and it is a party, Dr. Vibe can tell you.
It's a great time. It's so much fun, but it's fun and informative.
Yes, fun and informative.
And go ahead.
I'm sorry. Tomorrow we actually, not tomorrow, but Wednesday.
Yep.
I decided, after being inspired by you and all of this, that we are going to do a Black Panther conversation. And so
very nice.
Yeah. So I just decided that today we're going to do
that's fantastic.
Conversation. And you haven't seen it yet, Dr. Vibe.
Well, you know what? maybe I'll get to it.
Okay, let me know if you get to it, because I'd love to have you on the conversation.
I will try my best. I've got a number of shows to do in facilitation.
Absolutely.
I know, but it's all right. But no, and folks, please follow Tachi on Twitter. If people say who should I follow online, her and a few other people say no questions, just do it. Don't even ask me, just do it. Just do it. Just make it happen. So it's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations also. If you'd like to watch replays of YouTube conversations like this, you're at the place, so I don't have to tell you much. If you want to listen to audio replays of my Epic Conversations, you can catch them at the drvibeshow.com, also at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, Google Play Music Store, and iHeartRadio. Oh, yeah, it is iHeartRadio. It is iHeartRadio. And also, if you want to listen to selected replays audio-wise, you can go to thegoodmanproject.com and also to WJMS Radio out of New York. I'm also a brand ambassador for the only online magazine dedicated to African Americans in food, wine, and travel. The name of the magazine is called Cuisine Noir Magazine. The website is cuisinenoirmag.com. I'm also a certified empowerment coach, and if you'd like to have a complimentary empowerment coaching session, please reach out to me on Twitter at drvibeshow. Also, you can email me dr.vibe at thedrvibeshow.com, or you can go to the website, go to the top, it says connect with Dr. Vibe, click on that link. And I am president CEO of that organization called Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. I'm also provide a service called gettingmediacoverage.com, where I help entrepreneurs and businesses get media promotion so they can elevate their business. And finally, you can listen to me every Friday morning live on WURD out of Philadelphia. And I haven't forgot that yet, Tachi. I'm working on that. Out of Philadelphia, it is Pennsylvania's only Black-owned radio station. And that's AM, FM. And they're also available through their website and also through the Apple Store or App Store, and also the Google Play Music Store. As always, I'd like to finish off this year with 3 things. 2 of them you've heard before, 1 you may not have heard of. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Also, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. And finally, block assumptions. God bless. Peace to you all. Keep the faith. Thank you, Dr. Cami, for watching so much. God bless. Peace to you all. Keep the faith and walk good. Bye-bye, everybody.